everybody, happy Wax on Wednesdays. This is part 2 of the resin pour that I did. And I actually did this in 2 different segments, and I apologize for being gone last week. I was on some college visits with little Miss Reagan, so that kept us busy the last couple of weeks, but I am gonna finish up this resin pour, these couple of resin pours that I did here last week starting out. So that'd be part 1 of this week. It will be the first part of those resin pours. And this will be what the part 2 of what I actually do with those resin pours. And this year is I've kind of gravitated back to my roots, back to collage. I did a lot of collage, a lot of encaustic collage. If you've ever taken encausticology collage journey, a workshop that you can still get, but that I did a couple of years ago. I've sort of changed my style from a vintagey sort of collage to a little bit more contemporary, but I've sort of gravitated, my own artwork has sort of gravitated back towards that in the last couple of years, back towards collage in a more contemporary feeling. So I wanted to show, I thought it would be really fun to show what you can do with resin pours. You just don't have to end there, do the resin pour and just be done with it. You can build layers of resin just like you build layers of encaustic. So since this month I promised some different takes and different things other than just your normal Wax on Wednesdays with encaustic, I thought I would show sort of the other side of me of what I do with resin. And I don't mix the two. I get that asked a lot. I don't often, I should say, mix the two, encaustic and resin. I love the organic look of an encaustic finish. And so if I'm making an encaustic painting, no, I do not seal that in resin. The only time that I would do that with encaustic is if I had a structural 3-dimensional piece that I felt like the resin would lend to the overall finish or the integrity of the piece, or maybe certain parts of it in a 3D sculpture, then I might consider that. But on a normal encaustic painting, I'm gonna keep that beautiful organic encaustic finish. So I showed a little picture of what this looked like when it first had its resin painting on it, and I created I'm going to use that just as a background to this collage. So once this was dry and fully cured for 3 days, the resin background, I went ahead and gave it just a light sanding with some sandpaper just to give it some tooth, and then cleaned that off really well, and cleaning any of the dust from the sandpaper and the resin off very cleanly, and then went ahead and added my hand painted papers to my resin and created a collage. And this is just, so this will be the second layer. I can continue to build on these layers with the collage and continue to build that up, or I can keep it and just add 2 or 3 coats and just add 1 or 2 coats of the clear resin over the top of this. Before I do any of that, I'm gonna do exactly like I did with both of the puppy collages, and I'm gonna go ahead and seal these papers really well with matte gel medium. So I'm gonna go ahead and use just some Liquitex. You can use Golden, you can use whatever matte gel medium brand, it does not matter, but I do go ahead and give this 4 coats, and I go in all directions. So I'm gonna give it a coat going this way and then turn it. And this way I'm making sure that that matte gel medium is getting underneath all of these seams. I roll it out flat with my brayer with a piece of just plain wax paper over it, and roll it out really well. Once I adhere it with the matte gel medium, I roll it out with the brayer really well to make sure that there's no air bubbles in any of my papers. But now when I'm going across with the matte gel medium, I'm really making sure that there's no lift in those seams, and that all of that paper is sealed really well, so none of it becomes discolored when I go ahead and add that resin. Now the other piece that we did last week is this piece here, and of course I have it covered so that resin will dry. This is the 1, 2, 3, third layer. I'm gonna go ahead and add a fourth layer now. So this is what I was talking about really building up those resin pieces. This is the third, this has had 3 layers of resin on it. And with each layer, I've added something. So this is the background here that I did on the video. This is the original resin painting layer. I added a photograph of a hand. This is my original photography. Printed that out, cut it out, used it in the collage, and gave it another layer, clear layer. That was just a clear layer of resin over on top of that, and then went ahead and sanded it down again and added these little hand painted sort of flames, if you will, papers. All together, 3 resin layers, and I'm going to go ahead and add 1 more layer of clear resin, and I can see just a little bit of lift, I can see just a little bit of the paper coming through on this side over here, and also there's an air bubble here and here that I didn't get out when the resin was drying. So I'm gonna go ahead and just give this a light sanding, and I'm gonna concentrate on those little air bubbles and get those worked out, and then give it an all over sanding. And this gives it a little bit of tooth for that additional layer of resin to go on top of. So I've given the next layer of resin something to adhere to. And there's no worries about the fact that I've scuffed up this piece completely. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe it off with a clean damp cloth, and make sure that I have absolutely no sanded residue from the resin or from the resin and the sandpaper embedded in any of those cracks. But there's no worries about that not coming out clear when I go ahead and add the next resin layer, because it will come out clear just fine. So this is, so the resin that I'm using is art resin. That's the resin itself and also the hardener. It's in 2 parts, and it's a 50-50 that you add 1 part resin to 1 part hardener to your measuring cup, and then stir. In the case of art resin, it's 3 minutes that you want to stir this and mix it all up. And you want to make sure that you do it for the full 3 minutes, so there's no, you're not taking a chance and not mixing, there's no part of your resin that you've not mixed thoroughly. And go ahead and scrape the sides and the bottom. And I usually go ahead and let it rest for a minute after that, and let some of those air bubbles go ahead and dissipate. Okay, and also when using the art resin, it's really easy to calculate how much resin you need to use for your particular piece. They have a calculator right on their website at the artresin.com website to tell you how much you need to use for your size of piece. So it's really easy to calculate that way, so you're not wasting any resin. And a lot of times, also a little tip, I usually keep some small pieces, especially if I'm pouring a large piece. If I have some extra resin left over for whatever project is I'm doing, I usually have a little piece off to the side that I can resin if I have some extra, and that way I'm not wasting any of that good resin. I always have a use for it, even if it's on just a little small project off to the side. And if I don't have any left over, then that's okay too. So I've gone ahead and mixed this for 3 minutes, and I've let it set for a minute just to let some of the air bubbles dissipate. It still has, you can see, it still has some air bubbles there. I've only let it set for literally just while I was talking to you. So sometimes I'll let it set for a couple minutes and let some of those air bubbles dissipate, but we can also get it out with the torch once it's applied. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the resin to this piece. And this will probably be my final layer for this piece. This is the fourth and final layer of resin. The resin is self-leveling, so you don't have to worry about that. You can spread it with absolutely whatever you want. You can spread it with your fingers. You can spread it with, this is just a popsicle stick, old credit card, a squeegee tool, whatever you have on hand. I like using these disposable popsicle sticks and my gloved hands because both of them are going to get thrown away afterwards. There's no worries. I just want to get it to the edges, and I don't want to waste any and have it dripping all off to the side. I do make sure that my piece is level before I begin. So I put a level on top of this and made sure that the piece is level, and I can shim up these little yogurt cups if it's not, and that way I don't get my resin running down one side. And just go ahead and get the edges real well. If you ever have resin and you're using your gloved fingers like I do a lot, if you have some kitchen wipes, antibacterial wipes that have a little alcohol in them in the wipe, it'll take the resin right off your gloves so you can continue working with them, so not everything's so sticky and you're not getting sticky mess all over your tools. So I'm going to go ahead and just go over this with the torch very lightly and dissipate any of those air bubbles that are left in the resin. And my goal isn't to heat up the resin, but just to pop those air bubbles. And I'm gonna go ahead and check this piece every few minutes. I'm gonna babysit it for a good, probably 30 minutes. And just keep checking to make sure that no air bubbles have come about, and after that I will go ahead and cover until it's set up. And just pour it on. And I love the way this resin finishes off the collage. And for this one, I'll just go ahead and use my gloved fingers. And for the sides, if you saw part one, I didn't tape these off, so I could just go ahead, once this resin is completely cured, I can just go ahead and sand those sides and then paint them. It's no big deal. It's just a little bit of an extra step. So I'm not going to worry about any of the edges right now because I'm going to go ahead and sand them afterwards after it's completely cured after 3 days. And it's completely cured. So I'm going to go ahead with this one and get rid of any of those air bubbles as well. And I'm going to do the same thing to this piece where I'm going to babysit it for about 30 minutes, making sure that no air bubbles pop up. There's no specks of dust that I've missed or anything like that that I need to get out with a needle, that everything's nice and level. And gonna turn it every which way and just sort of bend down and really get in there and look and see if you have any bubbles or anything that you need to remove while the resin is workable. And in the first 30 minutes when you're able to sort of fix any of those situations. And once this it's been about 30 minutes and I'm sure that there's no air bubbles that have come up, and I've thoroughly either gotten any specks of dust out or any air bubbles out with my torch or a needle, then I'm gonna go ahead, and these little dollar store Tupperwares are perfect for these little small sizes of resin collage. These are just from the dollar store. They're little dollar store Tupperwares, and you can work the resin so the resin can make its mess in the bottom. The resin will actually peel up afterwards if you want to clean it each time. And then I go ahead and cover it once I'm sure there's no air bubbles, and that way no dust or anything is going to get in it while that's setting up. It needs to, it cures to the touch in 24 hours. It cures fully in 3 days. So in 3 days time, this will be fully cured and ready to sand the edges and hang up. So this is, again, a little something different. It's the way I've been working my collages lately and this year. And so I hope that you had a lot of fun. It's a little deviation from the wax as promised this February. And so I hope that you had a lot of fun, and we will see you next Wednesday. Happy Wax on Wednesdays. Bye-bye, guys.